Welcome everybody. Shalom, ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you for stopping by this brand new episode of Tech Twins, our new podcast right here at the Consulate General of Israel in Dubai. The purpose of this podcast is to highlight everything tech coming out of Israel, all the different opportunities in Dubai, and what we could do to bridge the two. And today, we're going to speak to someone who's doing exactly that. Welcome, Daniel Martin. Daniel Martin is the Executive Director of Cyber7, a position he has held since 2022. Prior to that, Martin was a very senior official at the Israeli National Cyber Directorate. He has enormous experience working with the public sector, the private sector, bridging the two. I'm not going to go into any more detail because I don't want to make this podcast irrelevant. I'm going to let Daniel speak for himself. But Daniel, hello. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Daniel, tell us about yourself. Who is Daniel Martin, and why does Daniel and Cyber7 play such an important role in the Israeli cyber ecosystem?
All right. So today, as you mentioned, I'm running Cyber7, Israel's cyber innovation community, and I will talk about that. But previous to that, I used to work for the INCD under the Prime Minister's office. I used to be in charge of promoting collaboration and partnerships with the local cybersecurity industry in Israel, but also with international certs around the world, sharing information. I think today governments understands that if they want to be able to handle cyber attacks, they need to find the ways to work with other governments. So that was my role.
You know, Daniel, something that's always interested me when I speak to people, a very long career in cyber who got to very top positions. How did you get there? In other words, there's no obvious career path in cybersecurity. If you're a lawyer, you know what you have to do to become a lawyer. You go to school, then you go to law school, and then you get an internship, and then you need to pass the bar, and then you become a lawyer. In cybersecurity, it's not like that. Even in Israel, I think there are only one or two undergrad degrees in cyber. Everybody has their own path. Everybody gets into it in their own way. Something we always ask all the CISOs and all the founders that we talk to, and now I'm asking you, how did Daniel Martin become the founder and executive director of Cyber7?
Okay, so I can tell you that it's actually something I didn't know that this is exactly where I'm heading. Before I started my career in cybersecurity, I used to work as a fundraiser, working across the world with philanthropists and foundations. And then I had experience in international cooperation. That was my background. And then I saw this job. I didn't know that the job is at the INCD under the Prime Minister's office. I didn't have a clue. But then after a few interviews, I understand that that's the role, and that's how I started my career in cybersecurity. And I think that this is fascinating area for people to grow, and there's a virus of a job that you can fit in, and there's a place to everyone. I think that what you said is very true. There's a lot of interesting stories about how people started their career in cybersecurity. So this is something that all of us can join, I would say.
No, I mean, I agree with you completely, especially in cybersecurity where it's inherently transnational, where you have any virus that starts out in, between the Russian-Ukraine war, one side, deploys malware, it will immediately infect computers all around the world. So international collaboration is inherently part of cybersecurity. It's not a matter of, conferences and just, sharing best practices. It's actually in, sharing real-time threat intelligence, real-time, awareness of different events, which is why it's so fascinating, especially in cybersecurity, the whole role of, not just the tech stack and, cloud security and the whole tech part of it, but in terms of the more social integration and the whole diplomatic cyber, or we like to call it here at the consulate, innovation diplomacy. Which brings me to my second question. You are the founding executive director of Cyber7, which is very interesting. And I'm not going to give a spoiler because I want you to explain what it is. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it, and also more about the role of where both, your bridge to the outside world, but which is more of the foreign affairs, the more of the foreign liaison role, but also your whole role in really growing the actual innovation part of it. So the actual, the next generation of startups. Whether we're talking about AI and whether we're talking about cloud security, now data is a big deal. Maybe you could tell me and all of our listeners a little bit more about that.
Okay, so Cyber 7 was founded 2 years ago by the Israeli government. The stakeholders are the Ministry of Economy, the INCD, Israel National Cyber Directorate, and Israel Innovation Authority, and it's led by Tech7, NGO that promotes innovation and entrepreneurship, focusing on Beersheba region because this is was declared as the cyber capital of Israel. And one of the main reasons, that's a very good question, because a lot of people ask me, why did the Israeli government had to establish this community if the industry is so successful? So I can say that in the public sector, and I was there, I know that there's a lot of bureaucracy, okay? And a lot of things they would like to do but cannot because of so many reasons and legal aspects and things like that. And the main idea was to create an entity that will look at the national level in Israel and promote partnerships between the different players in Israel, but also with international partners. There's a lot of international enterprises and government that wants to work with the Israeli cybersecurity industry. And Cyber 7 is their gateway to do that. And our focus is on economic growth. And Israel is very, very well known as a cyber nation. If I can be a little more accurate, yes, startup nation, I agree. But if you dive into the numbers, it's actually a cyber nation. So we're here to make sure that we're not only going to be at the top, we're going to stay there, which is much, much harder.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very clear example of the flexibility in Israel between the public and the private sectors, where everybody knows each other. At the end of the day, it's a very flat, social structure, and where you have the public sector and the private sector working together, as we see in Beersheba. Where you have, what do we have in Beersheba? We have the Israeli National Cyber Directorate. We're sitting together with VCs, sitting together with sectorial certs, sitting together with multinational companies, cyber companies into R&D labs, and of course Ben Gurion University's world-class cyber R&D labs. And it's in your role in Cyber 7 in general, and sort of making it all work together, getting all your ducks in a row, is very interesting. And I want to ask you,
and it's a very innovative, I must say, because I'm working with a lot of countries, and I haven't seen any country that has this model. Okay, so I think this is something that is really, really innovative to Israel, and I hope that more and more countries will adopt this model.
I agree with you 100%. As someone who worked in the public and the private sectors in cybersecurity, and we see that we're in a lot of countries, and not just in cyber, but in all things, the public sector and the private sector, not only do they not speak to each other, but they don't even know that the other one exists. And this is something in Israel where you have the public and the private sector sitting around the same table, and people getting a job in one and then going to the other, and people knowing each other. And it's something very uniquely Israeli. I think in the book Star Mission Central, they talked about it, about how everybody knows each other from the military, and everybody knows each other from the accelerator, from the same VC. And Israel's a very small country. It's hard for people to imagine, between all the space we take up in the political section of the newspaper and the media, but also, you see Startup Nation, you see the fact that Israel right now is responsible for, I think at this point, it's 55% of the world's R&D in cyber. And you assume we're talking about a country that's the size of like a continent, like North America, like Russia, but it's really not. And at the end of the day, there's maybe about 200,000 people in Israel working in cybersecurity, if you look at the numbers. And at the end of the day, that everybody knows each other, and everybody works together. And the fact that the government created Cyber 7 and what you're doing right now, really just having an umbrella group to get all your different ducks in a row is fascinating. And I'd actually like to hear more about that. If you could tell us maybe an example of certain collaborations you've done. I know maybe in Brazil, you guys have been doing a lot. If you could just explain to our listeners about, more about that would be fascinating.
Okay, so I'll give you maybe two classic examples that we're dealing all the time. So one could be kind of scouting requests. Okay, governments, enterprises, private organizations that are looking for a specific solution in cybersecurity, and they don't know who exactly should they contact, and we're helping them to do that, to find the right solution for them, tailor-made solution In our first year, we did like 300 business connections to the industry. That's could be the first example. The second is investors, VCs that also seeking to meet early stage startups. We're helping them also to do that if it's via a Zoom or a physical meeting. It doesn't really matter. If they want to meet them, we're helping each and every one of them. We have a very large deal flow and working with all the industry. So this is also something that we're doing. Brazil was a very actually interesting example because they have I think a very, very important program in Brazil where it's called Scale Up in Brazil, and it actually helps Israeli, Japanese, and Singapore companies to establish activity in Brazil. And they had a few rounds, but only one cybersecurity company participated. And after meeting with me and we started working together, more and more cybersecurity companies joined the program and established activities in the Brazilian market. So this is like a very classic example of how we can help foreign governments that wants to work with the industry.
Fascinating. Because essentially what you're doing here is international business development, but from a nation state perspective. In other words, working with the foreign government to be their bridge to the private sector, and then to bring the private sector into that country to open new markets with the help of that said government.
Exactly, because our focus is economic growth, and we're funded by the Israeli government, and we don't take any commission. Okay, I remember a few times when I had foreign delegations coming, and I explained to them what I do, and like a few times they asked me, what's the percent that you're charging? So no, zero commission. This is exactly the model, okay? And we have no interest. So the only thing that we're seeking to do is to help the Israeli companies. That's our role. We're focusing on that. And I think that, and I do my best to make sure that it's going to stay pure and like this, because I think that that's what we are unique in.
Yeah, of course. And in the end of the day, doing what you do, what you just described sounds like, international business development, but in the end of the day, it's actually increasing cyber resiliency and the cyber protection of any country. Because when you take 100 companies from Israel, which have some of the best cyber solutions worldwide, and you help them enter foreign markets, the people who are benefiting in the first and foremost are is industry in foreign markets, who now have an entire new suite of cyber solutions that wasn't really available to them beforehand. So it really helps everybody over here.
Exactly. I think that it's a win-win situation for both economies, but also for the resilience. It's true, because in cybersecurity specifically, the knowledge, the profession, the experts are not by the government, okay? Government officials. It's by the private companies, cybersecurity experts, and these are the people you want next to you once you have a cyber attack or something like that. So you need to find a way in advance, of course, how to work with them.
Yeah.
Okay? So I agree, totally agree.
Yeah, no, this is something that Israel does very well. Again, and I think in general, governments worldwide have realized that when it comes to cybersecurity, both in terms of having your own local ecosystem, in terms of best practices, academic R&D, your job isn't really to do it by yourself. Your job is to enable other people to do it. To create the conditions on the ground to let the full weight of the full innovation of the private sector, of academia, to come out. And for example, Cyber 7 is a classic example of that, where the government creates a private sector body, but to be a bridge to the entire world, and with academia, between governments, between the private sector, and says, do it, make it happen. And we discussed Brazil before, but there's also Dubai. In other words, last year I was lucky enough to lead the biggest ever cyber delegation from the UAE to Israel. I think it was 25 CISOs from the biggest corporations, not only in the UAE, but in the Middle East and worldwide. and we took them for an entire week around Israel, and they saw the entire ecosystem. And we spent the entire day at Cyber 7 in Beersheba. If you remember, if you could describe a little bit what they saw, maybe to illustrate about A, what's happening, and B, what's possible, and how you're really the bridge to the entire Israeli cyber ecosystem and all of its parts.
Yeah, so in Beersheba, there's a few main players, I would say, and this is what we showed the delegation that came last year. One is the Israeli government, the INCD, the National CERT, is located in Beersheba, together with like 8 sectorial SOCs of different ministries in Israel. The IDF Tech Units also is located in Beersheba. Private companies, national cyber R&D labs are located in Beersheba, and of course the Academy, Ben Gurion Cyber Labs, is also there. So the delegation met each and every one of them, and I think this is like a taste of the Israeli cyber ecosystem that they had, and we have. In our first year, we hosted 120 delegations from 45 countries, which includes like 1,750 people. So this is like, I think this number emphasizes how the Israeli industry, the people wants to work with them. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, you could throw out numbers, and the numbers are very impressive. But there's also the qualitative aspect. I mean, I remember we were sitting there with the delegation, 25 CISOs, some of the UAE's most impressive cyber talent, and we're waiting for a meeting at a BGU. What's a cyber at BGU, which is Ben Gurion University's cyber R&D center. And we're waiting because the meeting beforehand was going overtime, and then they finally leave. And what was that delegation? That delegation was from the NSA, from the US, probably one of the top cyber bodies, worldwide. And then we meet with all of the different professors and the researchers, and it's an absolutely amazing meeting. And then we leave, and who's waiting after us is DARPA from the US Department of Defense. And DARPA literally invented the internet. And they're going all the way to Beersheba to hear and to meet with people. And I'm like, wow, this is really the center. Israel in general and Beersheba specifically is really the center. This is where it's at. And how did that happen? In other words, Israel is a very small country. We live in a very challenging neighborhood. You wouldn't think that cybersecurity would be our niche, but at the end of the day, Israel right now leads cyber in almost every way in terms of innovation, in terms of capital deployed. Every VC worldwide right now, so that respects itself, has an office in Israel that deals with cybersecurity. How did this happen?
So first of all, I would like to say that it's not a coincidence, okay? The fact that Israel is a cyber nation. And from my perspective, and after talking about this topic with a lot of my colleagues, I think there are 2 main reasons for that. Number one is the IDF, okay? In Israel, you must join the army, and part of the IDF is the tech units and intelligence units that we have, and there is a direct connection between those graduates, those units, and the industry. Once they finish their military service, they go out to the industry, they launch their own startups or integrate in existing companies, and this is one reason that I think that the Israeli cyber industry is that successful. The second reason is the fact that actually the Israeli government, and this is very interesting, they had a goal to lead cybersecurity in the world. Okay, this is not something that already all of a sudden it happened. It didn't pop up from nowhere. Back then, Benjamin Netanyahu, he said that loud and clear. And the Israeli government back then established the National Cyber Bureau, and they planned long-term programs in order to create the cyber nation. Israel is a cyber nation, focusing on capacity building, academy, and of course the industry, and providing them different programs and investing a lot. So this is not a coincidence. This is something that the Israeli government wanted to go. So those are the main 2 reasons, if you're asking me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely, but it's something that a lot of people don't really understand. In other words, if you take 5,000 18-year-olds every single year, and you give them a crash course in software engineering and cybersecurity, and you teach them how, and by the time they're 19, they know Microsoft Office better than the engineers who built it. After 3 years, they're going to leave the military. I mean, what do you think they're going to do with it? They're not going to drive a bus. They're not going to become a lawyer. They're going to go into cybersecurity. And when you're young and you don't have a family, this is optimal for startups. And this is why you see founders in Israel, 25, 26 years old, selling companies for $300 million. I'm not aware of anywhere else in the world where this happens, not in cybersecurity, not anywhere else. Which also shows how the VC community, the investment community, is willing to actually take bets and pour a lot of money and take very big bets onto a kid who's 25 years old, who a lot of times doesn't even have a degree. And often it pays off, which brings me to my next question. Where do you see the Israeli cyber industry going? In other words, a few years ago, everyone talked about cloud, and now we're seeing data. What are some of the big trends you see?
Okay, so number one, that's a buzzword, but it's really, really true. AI, of course, technologies would help them to protect better, but also, on the other hand, hackers can use it to damage and hack much better as well. But I think that there's a very interesting thing that's happening today is that I'm not sure in the next few years if we're going to see like a huge company rising up like Checkpoint or Wiz or something like that, because now more and more companies actually are getting to the stage where they stop and then a huge company buys them. Okay, so this is something that is happening more and more, and I think we're going to see that. Palo Alto did a few deals like that in Checkpoint, Microsoft. So I think we're going to see more and more companies that goes through this way.
And you're saying, so instead of having 1,000 startups, a lot of them doing the same thing, we're going to see consolidation of maybe into 500 big companies or even less, where all the behemoths, whether it's CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, are just swallowing up the smaller ones, buying them, investing in them, venture studios or whatnot.
Exactly, because one of the main challenges of a CISO is that he has a lot of systems that he works with. Okay, now this is a problem. I don't have in my office 30 computers or screens, right? So trying to make sure that we all work on the one platform is really, really important. So the big companies are really trying to go through this to work and integrate everyone into one platform.
Yeah. Look, I feel like the white whale that every cyber company wants is to offer one platform, end-to-end security, the OT, the IT, data, cloud, internal threats. But the problem is that the more things that get connected to the internet, there's more things that you actually have to account for. In other words, if a doorbell 10 years ago was a normal doorbell that wasn't very complicated, and now it's a smart doorbell that you could, access from your phone, that means you have to find IoT protection for that doorbell, and that's only one example. So I think the more the industry keeps chasing that one solution, the dashboard of dashboards, and at the end of the day, the threats, especially with AI, will just always be one step ahead.
Exactly, I agree. This is like the holy grail.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy. Okay, a lot of times people talk to me about cybersecurity, trying to think of other systems in other areas, but specifically in cybersecurity, it's very, very complicated to do that. But I think that eventually it will happen in some way. I don't know if it's going to be perfect, but the fact that big companies are working on that today, I guess we're going to see a good solution in the next few years.
Yeah, and also, and this is very paradoxically true, but a lot of CISOs might try to protect against, might stop trying to protect against all of the threats. And I mean that, the classic adage that you don't have to be the fastest, you just have to be faster than the second guy. So, at this point, there's so many threats and the attack surface is so big that people realize it's impossible to protect against everything. In other words, you need to define or prioritize what's important, what cannot get hacked, whether it's customer data, whether it's things that have to do with compliance, right? Or things that threaten business continuity. But the things that are less important, not that you're telling an attacker come and do what you want, but it's like, but you're prioritizing it less because you just don't have the manpower, you don't have the funding, and you don't have the capacity to really deal with everything all at once.
Exactly. You need to make sure you have the right priority. I agree. You need to know what are your risks. Every CISO, he has his own limits, if it's a budget, employees, whatever. But eventually, yes, you need to make sure you know all your risks and you invest in each and every one what it needs. But eventually, yes, I agree with what you said.
Yeah, that's the whole question with AI. Is AI going to help or hurt cybersecurity? We were just at JISEC a month ago, which is the biggest cyber conference in the Middle East, and everyone was talking about AI. And half of the CISOs say that it's going to help because it's going to automation, and especially globally, the biggest threat cybersecurity problem right now is manpower. And if AI could even replace 30% of the manpower, that's a huge deal. And the other half of the CISOs we spoke to said AI is going to make all of my cybersecurity, my entire stack obsolete. And I'm so, threatened that I'm totally vulnerable. I don't even know where I'm vulnerable. So
this is a very interesting topic because a lot of people, when they talk about AI for cyber, don't talk about cyber for AI. And actually these days, the INCD has establishing a cyber for AI lab in CBG Ben Gurion Cyber Labs, that the focus will be creating or developing solutions, cyber solutions to protect AI technologies. Okay, usually when people talk about AI, they talk about how can you take AI technologies and integrate them into the products, cybersecurity products. So that's AI for cyber, but cyber for AI is a totally different thing when you need to protect AI technologies. Because think of someone who takes AI technologies and integrate them into existing product, and then a hacker has the ability to control this product with the AI technology. That's crazy.
Supply chain risk is.
I'm trying not to think about this scenario. I prefer not to, but this is something that we should look at. And I think that this is also a very innovative area that we're going to see in the next future. And Israel is focusing on that area these days also.
Yeah, and that actually, I've been meaning to ask you, where do you see AI and cyber converging, if at all, in Israel? Are you seeing new startups using AI? Are you seeing new startups with solutions to protect against AI attacks?
So first of all, there are a few new startups I met recently that their technology is based totally on AI, which is pretty amazing. And you're going to hear about them, if you didn't yet, in the near future. But also existing companies, I think most of them already integrated AI technologies in their systems and products. So this is something, if you want to stay in the game, you must play it, and which means you must integrate AI as well.
Yeah, no, of course. And we're speaking to you after you've spent, quite some time here over the past week in Dubai for all sorts of different ventures. Where do you see the Israeli cyber ecosystem and the MENA region in general? Do you think the Israeli cyber, is there a lot of interest? Have people been coming here?
First of all, even before coming here, I know that Israeli companies wants to work within Dubai and the whole region. But the main problem is that they don't know how, because it's a different culture. And this is something they need to learn how to do that. And I think that, I know a lot of Israeli experts, and, if we're talking about technology, yes, they have the talent to do that. But when you go to a different country, which has different regulation and it's totally different than what you used to, you need to learn and you need to change your mindset and be prepared. And I think that we thought about this together, but we're about to launch a very, very interesting program that would do exactly that. Okay, and help the Israeli companies work here. And we're going to meet them with the local experts in Dubai that will help them to do that, exactly that. Because if they can bring technology from Israel to Dubai and the whole region, they would help them to how to do that. Okay, so I think there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. We're seeing two things actually. In that one of them, there's enormous interest from the Israeli cyber ecosystem in the MENA region, especially in Dubai, because Dubai is the perfect gateway to the rest of the region as a trade hub, as a commercial hub. You know, the biggest cyber conference in the world happens over here. In the region happens here, which is JISEC. The biggest tech conference in the world, which is JITEX, happens here. So this is really a way where you could meet customers. You could have a gateway to not only to the UAE or the Gulf, but even places like in Asia and Azerbaijan, you know, Central Asia, India, which is a massive market right now for cybersecurity. And it's something that we've been telling Israeli cyber companies over and over again, and not just cyber companies, is that Dubai is your gateway to the world. No, don't just look at Dubai. Look at the world. Look at India. Look at Singapore, which a lot of the cybersecurity ecosystem in Singapore is very much tied over here. And I want to ask you if you've seen things that have worked in maybe Brazil or in other markets to really bridge the gap, you know, because we have the local CISOs are very interested in accessing the Israeli cyber ecosystem, whether it's companies and whether it's R&D or between, you know, connections between CISOs. And Israeli companies are very interested in accessing the market here. What do you think needs to happen in order for it to happen?
So I think that first of all, you all here in the Israeli Council are doing a great job in providing a framework and ground to work and connect between those two target audience. I think that first of all, the trust between them needs to be stable. This is the number one, okay, topic, I think, before you do business here. So this is something that you need to do first of all. I think that the second is to make sure you have your local colleagues here that helping you, working with you, and working together. Okay, finding the win-win situation, because as I mentioned, it's totally different, and here things takes time. So patient Israelis has a little problem with that, but they need to work on that. But patient also. And after a while, good things will happen.
Yeah, you know, people forget, but when you're not selling cybersecurity, you're selling trust, because the person is trusting you to protect him. The person is trusting you with his entire tech stack. A CISO has access to the entire company, from passwords to employee emails to financial information. And if they only met you yesterday, and you're from a country which they're not really aware of, why would they trust you? In other words, you need to build the interpersonal connections. People have to know who you are, what you're doing here.
Exactly. This is a very unique thing also about cybersecurity, the information, and this is trust is a huge issue in this. And if you don't understand that, you have a big problem. And it's not only in Dubai. That's, I think, a global thing. And you need to know how to do that. I agree.
Yep. And my final question is, what would you recommend to local CISOs or local entities in the UAE, Dubai, that are interested in taking the first steps, accessing the Israeli cyber ecosystem, seeing the different innovation, maybe some scouting, maybe looking around, talking to some VCs? What do you think should be the first steps? How do they go about this?
Okay, so I have a very direct message to all of them. Let's talk. Cyber 7 can be your gateway. We would like to have an introduction meeting. Let us know what are your challenges, what do you need exactly, and how do you want to do that, and we will be able to make sure and connect you to the right players, because there's a lot, okay? And I can promise that we won't take any commission about this. This is our job, but jump in, and I'm available for this. I'm available all the time, 24/7 for things like this. So we would be more than happy to assist in any way possible.
As they say, that all successful business ventures started out with a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
Or a Zoom chat, yeah.
Yes, we don't have good coffee like in Dubai, but we'll try to do our best.
So first of all, without causing a diplomatic incident, I'm not going to talk about whose coffee is better. And I'm saying this as a guy who's addicted to coffee and who's addicted to coffee both in Israel and in Dubai. So I have a pretty good sample size over, the quality of each coffee. That being said, I mean, Israel has a lot of different good things going on about it. I've never seen anybody come to Israel for the coffee, so we're not going to have a coffee delegation. But we do cyber delegations, and we do have enormous cooperation that we're engineering here at the Consulate General of Israel in Dubai and the local cyber community, a lot of which you have taken part of. And this whole podcast was part of that because it's very important for us, for the local community, to hear what people like you and Cyber 7 are doing. And also for the Israeli ecosystem to hear about all the opportunities in Dubai. Dubai is a gateway. Dubai is as Israel's hub to the east. And I want to thank you for stopping by today. It was fascinating. We've known each other for years, and I learned new things which I didn't know. It was very interesting. I want to say that anybody who wants to hear more can reach out on LinkedIn to Daniel. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to help you. This is exactly what we do. Be well, and thank you for stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me.